Well, our next topic tonight is church duds.
Yay, church duds.
I'm going to put on something a little less comfortable. So why is it that I don't get to dress like I've been shopping at American Eagle when I'm leading church services?
Why, oh why, Father Matt, why?
Well, the first thing, and this is not on the outline, is why do we wear this funny getup just for daily wear? And the collar reminds us that we are servants. And Paul says in the King James Version, I'm a bond servant of Jesus Christ. And these are reminiscent of the collar that would have been worn by slaves in Roman times. And in times past, the intention was that your collar would be tight enough that this little collar button here would dig into your Adam's apple every time you swallowed. And you would feel it, and you would be reminded, I'm a bondservant of Jesus Christ. So the collar is really a servant's collar. And we are God's servants, and we are here to serve you who are also God's servants. And the black is, when we get to the cassock, we'll talk about why our clergy outfits, clergy shirts are typically black. So yes, we have these odd clothing that we wear for church services, and they're called vestments, which are distinctive garments worn by the clergy and others who are up front, the choir and the other lay ministers. And they come from Roman society. This is how people in Roman times dressed, which is when the church was coming into being. So the basic garment that we wear is the long white robe called the alb, which comes from the Latin word alba, which means white. And it was underwear in Greek and Roman times. And it has become our basic garment when we celebrate the Holy Eucharist. And it symbolizes our baptism because we are washed white by the blood of the Lamb. Sometimes I think that we should all put on an alb when we come to church. All the baptized should wear their baptism. It could be an interesting symbol. And there's some people really take this liturgical propriety very seriously. And like some days, like if you come to 8 o'clock, I might be wearing an alb and a stole. And there's some liturgical purists who would say I'm running around in my underwear because I didn't put the big chagyo on over it. So you can take we have these wonderful customs, and as long as the customs serve the people and serve to glorify God, they're good. But when we become servants of the customs, that's when it gets into legalism and Phariseeism, and so you got to hold it lightly. So oftentimes the alb is tied off at the waist with a cincture or a girdle. It's just a long rope, and I use one of my little Boy Scout knots to tie it off. And in Scripture, where people are set when they talk about girding up their loins, when men dressed like this and they needed to run, they would pull up the bottom part and tuck it through that rope so they could run without their legs without tripping over the material. So if you're going to gird up your loins, you pull up that thing and tuck it in the rope so you can run. The next thing we wear is the stole, the long narrow strip of material, and we've been wearing one that's the same color as the altar frontal. And it's the traditional insignia for the clergy, and its origins are back in the Roman world. It was the different stoles that different officials in Rome would wear to show what office they held. And the church, when the church became accepted in the Roman Empire, the church adopted some of those things. The church also adopted some of the Roman buildings. I mean, the typical model of the church is on the basilica, which was actually a Roman. It was for civil gatherings. And when Christianity was accepted in Rome, some of those basilica got transferred to Christian use. And so we once the Romans decided if we can't beat them, join them, some of our customs blended in with Roman customs a lot. Now there are different ways to wear the stole. Traditionally, the bishop is the one who wears the stole straight down, and the deacons wear the stole with the cross going in from their left shoulder, and then it hangs down the right. So if we had a deacon in the parish, that's how they would dress. And then there are some liturgical purist priests who, for some people say that the way to distinguish a bishop from a priest was the priest would cross their stole. So it would go like that up down the front. And the first time I saw that, I thought, well, that's cool. It looks like the fish, the ichthus. And so I thought I might do that. And I have done that from time to time. But the more distinguishing factor, this distinguishing point of the bishop is traditionally the bishop is the only one who wears a pectoral cross. So if you look in a parade and you see the one minister who's wearing the cross around his neck, oh, that's the bishop. And so the stole, I typically just drape it. And because it's hot in Texas, and this is what they often did at my seminary in Austin, there's an owl that's called a cassock owl, and it's not designed to have a cincture, so it's more of a flowing garment, and it has a rolled collar, and then you would just put a stole on under that. And sometimes I do that in the summer when it's just really hot, and I'm told that's the Benedictine way of vesting, and so. Then what we would throw on top of our Alban stole is called the chagyo. It's that big poncho-looking thing. And what the chagyo was in Roman times, it was your overcoat. If you were going out into the weather, it would be the cloak that you put on to protect you from the weather. And they had, especially if you were of a more wealthy station in life, they had simple ones if you're just going out shopping. But if you're going to a party, you had fancier ones. And so ours tend to be kind of fancy because we're coming to a party with the Lord. And so the chasuble is that garment that completes the priest's Eucharistic vestments. And then on the next page, the long black robe, which is called a cassock. And it's kind of like the alb, except it's black. Typically black. Bishops often wear a purple cassock. Now, back in olden times, that was what clergy wore when we went outside. And so that's the reason why our clergy shirts are traditionally black. I have some blue ones. And there's some suppliers in England that make all sorts of different colors. And some of them just look kind of strange. Typically the bishop wears a purple clergy shirt. But the alb used to be what I would wear when I went out. It was my street garb. And so, but now we've added this layer of stuff. And you know where pants kind of had their origin? It was when the Romans bumped into the barbarians, typically the Germanic tribes. The Germanic tribes were trousers, pants. And the Romans, so if you see drawings of battles between Romans and the barbarians are the ones wearing pants, and the Romans are wearing the short skirt-like items. And so our custom of pants comes from the barbarians. And now it's kind of like civilized, so things change. So it makes it kind of, it can be very warm, because I typically, if I'm going to wear my cassock, I don't take off all this stuff. I put it on top. So I'm like, oh, this is really sweaty. And so, and then over the cassock goes the white surplice, which comes from a Latin word that means over a fur garment. And it used to be something you would have a fur, like in the cold, old, drafty churches in Northern Europe, they would have a fur item that they would put on over their cassock just to keep them warm. And we don't have that problem so much in Texas. But the Anglican style is the long, that goes far down. one of my mentor priests is very much a liturgical purist, and he says whether it's your alb or your cassock, it should go to the top of your shoes. So I do notice when we have servers, who their alb is like just below their knees, it's like your thing is too short, and it says you're like our trousers. His thing is our trousers should not be seen when we are in the liturgy. So yeah. Now so we have these two different styles. We have alb, stole, and chasuble. That's for celebrating Holy Eucharist. And then the other item, this is called our choir dress. And you'll notice the choir wears the cassock and the surplice. If we were having a service of morning prayer as our service on Sunday, that's what I would wear. And then I would accessorize with the tippet, which is it's a long black scarf, and I have an Episcopal church shield sewn onto it. And some people have their seminary seal sewn onto the other side, but my seminary seal, it looks like a lifeguard patch. I've never really liked it, so I didn't put my seminary seal on there. And then on the back, you put your hood, your academic hood from your seminary, and each seminary has its own different little color scheme. Now, if you go out around the Episcopal Church, you may encounter those of a more low church persuasion, and in that piety, and I do it, you can tell if I'm feeling my Catholic side or if I'm feeling my Protestant side, because sometimes I've worn cassock and surplice and then put a stole on it and celebrating Holy Communion that way. And to me, it's just an expression. Our church allows for those different kinds of expressions. That's why I can't say I'm a dyed-in-the-wool Anglo-Catholic, because I appreciate the aspects of that, and sometimes I feel like I want to do a lot of ritual, but then there's sometimes when I feel a little more simplified and streamlined, and so I go back and forth. Then on the last page this is the Episcopal vestments. This is what you might find the bishop wearing. And the first one is the traditional wear for Anglican bishops. So they start with the cassock, and then the red kind of long vest thing, sleeveless. That's called the shamir. And so under the shamir, so you have your cassock, and then the white robe, the white thing that he's wearing is called a roshet. And one of the main differences there is the sleeves are pleated, so it's not got the flowing sleeves. And then he puts the shamir over that, and then the tippet. And then the crozier is the shepherd's staff, because the bishop is our chief pastor in our diocese, so he's the shepherd, and so guiding us. So that's kind of more of your low church evangelical bishop, and really our Bishop Scott likes to dress like this, but there's some parishes that want him to be all decked out in the other garb, and so he has all that too. And the main difference, you see the pectoral cross, but they even wear that in the other item too. But the headgear that identifies the bishop is called a mitre, and it comes from the Greek word mitros, which means turban. And there are some bishops, like in the Eastern tradition, the bishop's mitre really, you can tell it is a turban. And somehow in the West it developed into this kind of shape. And on the back of the bishop's mitre, there's two flaps of material, and those are called lappets. And they are symbols of the tongues of fire of the Holy Spirit that came onto the apostles on the day of Pentecost. Because the bishop is the successor to the apostles. And so that has come to be part of the symbolism of the bishop's outfit. Now, this bishop is wearing sandals because he's humble. And so he's probably not Episcopalian, because most of our bishops are going to be wearing black leather Oxford shoes. So that would be interesting to see a bishop in sandals. But
Right.
and the color purple for bishops, it developed during the time of in some 4th century, maybe 5th century is when because up until that point there were some bishops who wore green, because green back in those times was kind of the color of humility, and so there were your green bishops and your purple bishops, and the purple bishops won out. And in St. Augustine's memoirs, he writes about being sad about that the purple bishops won out, because he really wanted us to see ourselves as, he wanted the bishops and all the clergy to see themselves more as servants than as, princes and regality and things like that. So that's a little bit about our duds. There are other things that some people wear, and I didn't go into them there because we don't really break them out too much here. I could wear a coat, like this bishop is wearing a coat. We have a coat. I have never felt comfortable in a coat because you have to keep its shape. You have to keep your hands inside of it, and like if I wanted to go, the Lord be with you. If I'm wearing a coat, I got to go, the Lord be with you. I feel like a T-Rex, So I've never felt comfortable in a coat. So. Any questions about our church duds? Good, I hope that's been helpful. We have one more segment, and that's getting into our spiritual gifts.